Peach Pundit the Podcast is a conversation filled with the personal opinions of the people who are participating. Any view or opinion expressed belongs only to the person who expressed it and not with anyone with whom that person is professionally affiliated.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Peach Pundit the Podcast. I am Jason Pye, joined by my good friends Scot Turner and Buzz Brockway. Guys, it's good to see you both. Buzz, it's good to see you, but I know it was a bit of a struggle to get here because technology screwed you over.
Yeah, there's an AT&T outage all over the place in my part of Lawrenceville. I'm up near the Mall of Georgia. Actually, a place called the Exchange. There's a Starbucks right around the corner there, and all kind of stuff. So, anyway, it's
just if you're not watching, he's set up in his car.
Yeah.
So he can record with us. This is the commitment to Buzz Brockway and his craft.
Just make sure you stay off signal. Real fast, Scott.
Yes. But this is how much I love you, the audience. So, God, love our audience.
Yes.
This is how much.
Yes.
A couple quick notes. One, I have this perfect song that you should use as the intro from going forward, because it opens with me screaming at the top of my lungs.
Well, so we all know that's what you really want to do all the time, especially when you're talking to us.
Yeah,
can we just talk? Can we talk about
you? More specifically, you.
I know I have that impact on you. I know.
Yeah.
I know all the buttons suppress.
And then the second thing, I had forgotten what it was.
Well, it's baseball season.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Baseball season is back
At last.
If you are a T-Mobile customer, make sure you go sign up for MLB.TV for free for the whole year. I know I did, so I can watch my beloved Reds struggle all the way through the end of summer.
I saw a prediction today that De La Cruz is going to win the MVP award.
So the kid is good. He cut down on his strikeouts pretty big during spring training. But it's spring training, right? He hit 400 in spring training. He hit a bunch of bombs. But the big thing is he cut down the strikeouts. And if he does that, he gets on base. Oh, it's over.
The second thing I was going to say before we go into paying our bills is I bought a banjo this weekend.
Yeah, and he was playing a little for us.
Well, I know, but our listeners don't know that I bought a banjo, and I'm telling them now that I bought a banjo. I also bought a Martin acoustic guitar, which my wife doesn't know about.
Oh, but boy. Already,
she's been married less than a month, and he's already hiding purchases.
Yes,
she knows about the banjo.
So, well, do you enjoy canoeing in the North Georgia mountains while playing the banjo? That's what our listeners want to know.
I mean, more the Shenandoah because that's what's out here. So, but let's go pay some bills. We'll jump into the this week's topic.
Americans for Prosperity is excited to share results of recent polling on Senate Bill 28, also known as the Red Tape Rollback Act. You'll learn more about that later in a special segment. 74% of statewide likely voters approve of both key provisions of the bill, showing wide bipartisan support, including AFP's advocated REINS Act language. Visit afpgeorgia.com to view the polling memo. Americans for Prosperity will continue their outreach to grassroots activists to encourage House passage of this legislation. Thank you to our friends at Americans for Prosperity for being a partner-level Patreon. If you too would like to be a Patreon to the podcast, head on over to patreon.com/peachpundit. Sign up for one of our tiers today. If nothing else, stop what you're doing right now. Press the like button. Hit the subscribe button.
Yeah.
Get the notifications every time there's a new episode. We're trying to do this every week. And you, the listeners of the Peach Pundit Podcast, are the most informed listeners in all of Georgia because you actually sit with us to learn more about what's actually happening in Georgia. We're the only podcast that pulls the curtain back, shows you how the sausage is made.
Peach Pundit has an anonymous Patreon who would like to invite you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. No one should fight Alzheimer's alone. With your help, no one will. Learn more on their website, alz.org.
So, Buzz, I am going to go to you first because I think you have the most interesting story, or at least good news story for the state of Georgia that I think we should talk about. So 600,000 jobs related to the Savannah and Brunswick ports. Buzz?
Yeah.
I'm teeing it up for you.
All right. Yeah. So I got an email from one of the lists I'm on, Metro Atlanta CEO. They have a lot of good information about business here in Atlanta, in and around it, Georgia and so forth. And it touted 300,000 jobs in Atlanta. But when you dig in, it's 609,197 jobs statewide related to the Savannah and Brunswick ports, over $40 billion in income, $170 billion in sales, and $5 billion over $5 billion in state and local taxes. So that's just, this is an impact study done by the University of Georgia, Terry College of Business. So I hope we can trust those numbers. I'm just kidding. They're good stuff.
Oh.
But
if it had been the economics department at Georgia Tech, on the other hand, he wouldn't have
those would
questioned
be
it at
gold. That'd be gold right there. But what's amazing is, Fulton County, 102,000 jobs in Fulton County directly related to the port. 50,000 here in my home county of Gwinnett. So it's just a lot of jobs.
That's 4 hours away from the Savannah.
Right.
Well, the Savannah port's even further away from the Brunswick port.
Yep. And I think it just, obviously, we know the history of Atlanta. We were called terminus. Transportation. We were a humongous transportation hub because of the airport. Well, also because of the ports, and that impacts impacts every county in the state of Georgia in a positive way. And of course, what they're doing is they're building these what they call inland ports, several of them around the state. They load the cargo onto trains. Trains carry them to the inland port, where they are loaded onto trucks, and they're distributed really all over the United States. The stuff that comes through Savannah and Brunswick wind up all the way out to the West Coast in a matter of days. And that is it's an unbelievable logistics. If you're a nerd who loves logistics, kind of like I am, it's unbelievable what they do. And you can see 600,000 jobs tied directly to those two ports. So
it's actually almost
awesome.
It's actually almost 600,010.
Yeah.
609,197. That's 12% of Georgia's total employment. $171 billion in sales. That's 12% of Georgia's total sales. $72 billion in state GDP. That's 9% of the state's total GDP. $40 billion in income. 6% of total personal income. $10 billion in federal taxes. $2.8 billion in state taxes. And $2.5 billion in local taxes. The bottom line here is the ports are important.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if you meant for this discussion to be about tariffs, but the goods flow both ways, right? They export and import in those ports. And we do a significant amount of exporting out of here. And in a trade war, does this make Georgia more susceptible to the economic impact of tariffs?
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. It hurts. And you think of all the, we know in Trump 1.0, the trade war with China had a bad impact on our farmers. Trump had to bail them out with money. There's already talk of doing that again because of the picking a fight with Canada and Mexico, who all of those countries buy our stuff that we grow right here in Georgia. So it's bad. And I don't know how we have people in this state who have the ear of the president of the United States. And I know some of them, for sure, in the business community are absolutely letting the president know what it means. And this is another way that it can hurt our economy here in the state of Georgia. These trade wars.
But you have too many. Certainly there are some people from Georgia who have the ear of the president. That being said, you have Buddy Carter, who's focused on messaging bills like red, white, and blue land. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's pushing whatever crazy nonsense she can find. She's most recently co-sponsored all the resolutions to impeach the judges who dare hold their constitutional responsibility, which has been the responsibility of the judicial branch since Marbury versus Madison, the whole concept of judicial review. And their focus. It seems like they're focused on everything but what's best for Georgia, and at least that's the way it comes. That's the way it seems from a distance. But
I don't blame them though. I blame us. we
100%.
allow it, right?
Yep.
I mean, we're tolerant of it. We actually enjoy it. We love Mike Collins and his memes. We love Buddy Carter and Red, White, and Blue Land. We think it's funny, and we deserve it. I mean, I can't be mad at him.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, we are governing by owning the other side. I mean, both sides do, but it just seems exceptionally worse in this time around than it has in recent history.
It's largely performative. I don't think any of it's.
100%.
I don't think there's any of it is sincere. I think it's I'm making it funny.
Yeah.
No, it's today's
Sure,
politics
yeah.
is reminiscent of the latest drama in the WWE. I mean, it is performative art. It's political drama, and we keep tuning into it and keep paying attention to it and keep electing the same idiots over and over again because it humors us.
Look, it's more entertaining than anything you're getting off Disney Plus today. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't know, man. Deadpool with Wolverine was pretty good.
Daredevil.
Well, okay, I'll give you
Daredevil.
that. I did enjoy that one.
But Buzz, since you mentioned Canada, I mean, like the good news is at least somewhat the hemorrhaging in the stock market has seemed to slow down.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
the
I think,
Dow finished up.
Folks are talking about next week, April 2nd. That's when Trump's going to make some decision about tariffs. And so, but I hope he's getting the message that it's mostly our economy. Yes, tariffs are terrible, but the American economy has shown an amazing ability over the decades to withstand stupid politicians and actions by stupid politicians and stupid government tricks. And so, but what they need is stability. And right now, with all the jerking back and forth, oh, I'm going to do it. No, I changed my mind. Oh, it's going to be 12.5. Oh, it's going to be 25. Pick something and go with it. Hopefully 0. But pick something and go with it so that the people in business can adjust to it and figure it out and get back to work. That's a huge problem.
To quote again, House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Kevin Brady, tariffs or taxes, lower is better, 0 is best.
Yes. Amen.
Canada, since you mentioned Canada earlier, I sent you guys this before we jumped on, that Donald Trump has single-handedly bailed out the Liberal Party in Canada. They're on track. They're 62% chance as of today to win the majority outright. Currently, they're in a coalition government, but they will win. 62% chance of winning the majority outright in the next election.
That will be hostile to the interests of the United States, right?
I mean, yeah.
Now, amazingly, speaking of Canada, I saw a YouTube ad popped up on me today, and the guy starts out by saying, "I'm a Canadian company, but I love America. Okay, so please, here's my product, buy it." So,
well, speaking of all the craziness happening in the world today, the world of trade, the world of tariffs, and the craziness in Congress it's reaching an absurd point. So you had I went to the Hill last week, and last week was a recess week. I had 8 meetings on Wednesday, and I had about half an hour to sit down and eat lunch, which was pre-made sushi from over in the Rayburn building, which frankly speaking wasn't that good. It's about the quality of the stuff you get from Publix. So, but I was surprised how busy it was. There were fly-ins that were taking place that same day during a recess week, and every staff or every office I went into, it seemed like they were either just finishing a meeting or another staffer was taking a meeting as I was walking in, and there was a meeting taking place. So it's kind of wild. But so I say all that to say, one, I want to go through a couple quick things. One of the rumors on the Hill last week, which was subsequently reported in the news, is that this freshman lawmaker from Texas, Brandon Gill, who's the son-in-law of Dinesh D'Souza, and the noted conspiracy theorist, he had introduced a impeachment resolution against Judge Bosberg, and that he was going to potentially force a vote on the floor this week. He has backed off that threat now, but so you had that. Then you start hearing a new timeline for the consideration of the budget once the House and Senate agree to it. That's now being pushed to the week of April 7th. The original House bill instructions had committees reporting to their work to the House Budget Committee on March 20th. Now they're pushing a final vote potentially the week of April 7th, which is just before the 2-week April recess, Easter recess. They're saying now that they won't get done with the final tax bill, which will also have immigration and other stuff in it too, increasing the debt limit just before the August recess. So, and then in all this, Congressman David Schweikert, who's a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, asked CBO for alternative scenarios of the budget. the permanent extension of TCJA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, under normal interest rates, and then another one under higher interest rates. And it blows the budget deficit up to 16.6% of GDP by the end of the extended baseline period, or extended budgetary period, 2054. That's under the worst case scenario. Higher interest rates increases the deficit of the debt by $46.7 trillion over the next 30 years. And that's
real
without,
money.
And I will say that's without trade-offs, that's without spending cuts, but the baseline operates under the assumption that everything stays neutral, that everything operates under current law, that if it says it's going to expire, with the exception of TCJA in this case, that it will expire. So, but you're looking at $188.3 trillion budget deficit in 2054. And that will exceed 200% of GDP. No, actually, it's like 250% of GDP.
Calm down. The tariffs are going to save us. Calm down.
That's the worst case scenario. That's higher. These much higher interest rates. And it's. I think I understand why Schweiker did it, because the Senate wants to operate under the current baseline, this fuzzy phony math that they want to have the CBO score TCJA as though it never went out of. It's not expected to go out of. It's not expected to expire. And this is him showing we're still going to know it. I think that's why he did it. It's because Schweiker himself is not opposed to the tax cuts, but and then you have SignalGate.
Gosh, the memes from SignalGate are incredible.
This is they are the one of Big Bird sitting in the room.
Yes, I shared that with my friends today.
One of these things is not like the other here.
I saw that one on Reddit last night. Actually, the stuff on Reddit has been great, but you have. I don't know how did you screw this up so bad? In the answers today, John Ossoff, I know you guys are Republicans. I know that you're not going to vote for John Ossoff. That's fine. I don't care.
I'm not voting for John Ossoff.
That's fine. But he asked point blank, he asked John Ratcliffe, who's the director of the CIA, if this was a mistake. And Ratcliffe says, no. Ossoff was apoplectic. He did everything he could to hold in his contempt for that answer.
Well, because you're not, they're not supposed to use apps like Signal on their government phone. So we don't know if this was their government phone or private phones. They're not supposed to use apps like Signal because they're not secure enough.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't. Here's the problem. I think
if it's not secure, I got to delete this real fast. Hang on, boys. Go ahead.
So Christine Rosen today. I'll just say this, Jason. I'll let you get back to your rant. But
no, you're good.
This is incompetence. And part of why Trump was elected, Trump spent 4 years talking about Biden, about how he never fires anybody who screws up. They just keep rolling right along. Well, a prediction for you. Ain't nobody getting fired out of this, even though they were dumb enough to, first of all, communicate major policy strategies over an insecure app with a reporter in the chat. And don't give me this crap of, it's a 7D chat. This is incompetence, and in the business world, heads would roll. But no, we got to defend our guys. These are our guys, so we got to defend them, and it's stupid. And I think kudos to John Ossoff or anybody else who grills these guys, because I want to know how the heck did this happen, and what steps are taken to make sure nothing this stupid ever happens again.
It's bad when Buzz Brockway uses the word crap to describe it. That's how you know it's bad.
That's DEFCON. What's the highest DEFCON? That's it. One below that, right?
Yeah, it's DEFCON 2, I guess.
And we have to say, people can blame the liberal media. Said, oh my goodness, he did not report any of this stuff until after the Houthis had been attacked. He didn't blow the cover on this, even though he could have. He didn't do that. He restrained himself, and he reported it after the fact. So Jeffrey Goldberg.
You also know, though, he was like,
absolutely, man.
This just made my year.
There'll probably be a bunch more stories, because he captured all kinds of stuff.
He's saying there's more coming. And
absolutely.
yeah, this is sort of in response to some of the things that have been said, because the White House initially confirmed the exchange and said, that appears to be real, because he doubted it at first, and then when they started talking about the bombs dropping was when he checked on Twitter to see what was happening in Yemen, and sure enough, and like the thing about JD Vance, that guy for some reason hates Europe more than, like, he considers Europe the enemy, and he's saying that we're bailing out Europe by bombing the Houthis. No, you're not. No, you're not. If anything, you're bailing out Israel, because they've been targeting Israel with a lot of they're also targeting ships in the Red Sea. It's the
shipping lanes, right? That's that's part of what. But I'll speaking of Vance, it'd be interesting to watch, okay, because he took some shots at Trump in this kind of, saying, "Oh, Trump's been duped." How will that? What kind of effect will that have on Trump and Vance's relationship? That's got to be interesting moving forward, because
he's saying it's not Trump's fault because he was duped, right? He's saying
that's implying that Trump's too stupid to know when he's being duped,
or he's trusting the wrong people. Don't trust them, Mr. President. Trust me. I'm the one that got your back.
Yes,
if he hasn't already, he should have been hauled in the Oval Office and say, "Listen, little pipsqueak, what did you mean by this?"
They had lunch today, and I'd love to be able to fly on the wall. And I'll say this before I move on, because Scott's topic is next. JD Vance has the worst unfave of any vice president in the history of polling. I don't know that I would be paying much attention to his advice.
Well, I do have one question for you about the SignalGate thing, because this aspect has been fascinating for me to watch. It's a litmus test for how tribal are you.
Yeah.
If you are defending what happened in SignalGate because your side were the ones who goofed up, then this is clearly an indefensible series of things that happened. There is no defending it. It was a massive screw up. And if you are out there defending it, here's your sign that you have totally subscribed to tribalism, because if this had been Joe Biden, or Barack Obama, you would be livid.
Let me ask you, answer your question with a question, Scott. What's worse, defending it or ignoring it? Because today in the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, I am not aware of a Republican who brought this up, except for the chairman of the committee, Tom Cotton, who only brought it up to clarify things that the witnesses had said, which included Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard.
Right. And then didn't Tulsi say during I read a headline, I didn't read the whole article because I was preparing for the podcast, but didn't she say something like, it wasn't an accident?
I don't remember exactly what she said, but the question over whether the information that was being shared was classified kept coming up. And I mean, every person who has been on CNN today who has been responding to that has basically been saying, yeah, it's classified. Any sort of military action that we're conducting is classified by its nature. It's classified. And Hegseth was talking about it in real time.
Yeah. I mean, in days gone by, you would have gone into a skiff. All the people in that who were involved in that discussion would have gone into a skiff that's secure. Your phones would have been left outside, and you would discuss it, and then you'd make your plans, and then you come back out and you execute it. So
I only know what a skiff is because of TV, right?
Yes.
So tell everybody what a skiff is.
It's a secure room that, right. And there's stuff put up. I mean, they have mobile skiffs. I mean, wherever the president goes, they have the ability, if necessary, to create a mobile skiff, and it's meant to be private and secure, and also to be I don't know about the mobile ones, but probably the ones that are in the various buildings. You can't sit in the next room and have a listening device and listen in. So those sorts of things are blocked.
Right. And these skiffs, like, I know there's one in the Capitol Visitor Center. There's one in the basement of the White House. I think the Situation Room's a skiff as well.
Yeah, it would have to be.
And look, and sometimes it's just a skiff. It's not. It's to we need to read some top secret documents, and we go into a room that's locked and nobody can get in. So it doesn't necessarily have to have all those extra enhancements. But if you're going to be talking, yeah.
Well, Scott, you have former State Representative Vance Smith says he lost his job the day after his the day of his vote on tort reform.
Yeah. So I was told cancel culture has been canceled. Weren't you guys under the same
it's a new day.
Operating
it's a new day, and freedom is springing forth across the land. We can say whatever and do whatever the heck we want now, right?
Some people deserve to be canceled, but I'm not sure voting against a bill is the reason to cancel someone.
Yeah, there's been a lot of reaction over this story. So yesterday, the AJC in their morning jolt led off with this little tidbit about how just hours after Republican State Representative Vance Smith voted against Governor Kemp's tort reform legislation, he lost his day job as the CEO of the Harris County Chamber of Commerce. You'll recall that bill passed with only a single vote. 8 Republicans voted against it. Several walked or were excused, and 3 Democrats bailed out the effort and voted in favor of it, giving it the 1 vote margin it needed to pass, go back over to the Senate for an agree, and go to the governor's desk for signing. Now, I think it's important to note that no one here at Peach Pundit, even in our professional lives, had an interest in the tort reform bill. We worked on all kinds of other things during this legislative session. Tort reform was not it. We didn't have a dog in the fight. I understand why passions are high on both sides. And on one side, you had the Chamber of Commerce types, like the Harris County Chamber of Commerce. On the other, you had the trial lawyers. And now you have 2 giant special interest groups coming together and bashing heads for the majority of the legislative session. That being said, I think if I were in the House still, I would have voted for the legislation because it made sense to me. After studying the issue as much as I did, which wasn't a lot, not as much as the average legislator did, but I didn't think it did anything to violate constitutional rights. I really honestly don't believe that it did anything to limit access to the courts, which is what the trial lawyers claim. It did do some things to set up how the courts handle these civil cases whenever there is potential damages. And if you want to learn more about the specifics of that, I have written extensively. There's a huge blog post about what the bill does. And we've also talked about the political fallout. But that's it. We try to maintain factual status. But Rep. Smith voted differently than I would have. And in the great American tradition, I will defend his right to conscience. It is something that I held precious. Buzz as well. There was a group of us who simply just wanted to vote our conscience. We wanted to vote our district, and we wanted to not have to pay a political price just because we voted on something that was completely unrelated to other policies. But that's not really how the legislature works in reality. There is some level of retribution all the time, but this is going very, very far. The AJC article does not make the absolute accusation. It says, hey, here are 2 dots, right? There was this event, the tort reform vote, and the second event was he lost his job. And it leaves it up to the reader. Well, I talked to Representative Smith today, and he confirmed for me that he was in fact fired because he cast that vote. That is a chilling development. Every legislator in Georgia takes an oath. And I'm going to read that oath to you now because people don't really understand what the oath of office is for a legislator. But it reads like this. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of this state and of the United States, and on all questions and measures which may come before me, I will so conduct myself as will, in my judgment, be most conducive to the interest and prosperity of this state. Sometimes activists love to bash on electeds, especially legislators, saying, oh, they're violating their oath of office. They don't understand the oath. That oath, the way it is worded, gives the individual legislator a ton of discretion in figuring out how to navigate all these competing priorities.
And a heavy responsibility, right? I mean, it's a heavy responsibility.
And some conflict, right? But that promise is that they're going to use their judgment for the best interest of the state. That promise is not that they use the judgment to cast votes they believe in their best interest, not their own paycheck, not a special interest, not even their own political future. It's a lot to ask of somebody. And now you introduce this ingredient into this cake, and those interests are sometimes directly in conflict. And the legislator has to navigate and figure that out. And look, we all have to represent different districts. We have different things that our constituency wants to see in the prosperity of the state of Georgia. But imagine for a second you're a legislator. And now you got to worry about whether or not you can make your mortgage payment over a vote because your employer may fire you. That's not how our system is supposed to work. We are supposed to love the fact that we have a citizen legislator, that they're part-time. They get paid nothing practically. It's $20,000, $22,000 a year now, spread out over 12 months, which doesn't replace the potential for income earning that they have during that 3 to 4 month period at the beginning of every year. And now we're heading down this really dark place if this is allowed. I will say this, the whip of the House, James Burchett, didn't directly condemn, but he issued a very strongly worded statement saying, we have to support our members. And that type of behavior, and he mentions cancel culture, is unacceptable. So kudos to him. Sorry for Vance. And this gentleman, love your feedback on what your take is, because I think it's very, very dangerous for legislators now to have to contemplate whether or not they're going to be able to provide for their families and do this job the right way.
It's just the whole thing is icky to me, and I like all the people involved. I mean, we serve Advance. It's all very icky to me, just to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And some of it, Representative Smith voted, as you said, Scott, he voted his conscience. And we don't know what conversations he had with his Chamber of Commerce. Most Chamber of Commerces across the country have been on the affirmative side of this issue, meaning they wanted lawsuit reform, tort reform, whatever you want to call it, for a long time. That's been a well-established position of the Chamber of Commerces all over the place. So I have no idea what conversations took place. So Sam in the comments here has mentioned it's kind of weird to have a CEO of a chamber in the legislature. Yes, because there's going to be these sorts of situations where his employer wants him to vote a certain way, his conscience wants him to vote, and then his constituents fit in there somewhere. So it does create those sorts of things. Yeah. And this is and I'll just be honest with you, I haven't spoken to Representative Smith, but there are rules in the Senate. We jokingly call it the Chokas rule in the House because Representative Mike Chokas would use this because he's a businessman who's been involved in a lot of businesses and a lot of different industries. And there will be times that you have that right as a legislator to stand up and say, I'm conflicted out of this vote. I need to not vote in this. And you have that right to do that. And
yeah, I did it a couple of times. Yeah. I mean, if it's something that impacts your industry directly, and he could have definitely done it, it definitely would have been wise of him to invoke Rule 133. That's the House rule that allows any member to determine for themselves that they have a conflict of interest and invoke that and be excused from the vote.
We have a comment in the chat that I do want to flag. And by the way, for those of you who are listening, you can go to patreon.com/Peach Pundit and subscribe to the $10 a month level and come on here live with us and watch us as we record the podcast, just like our commenter is doing here in the chat. He says, let's be real here, though. A state House rep being the CEO of a local chamber of commerce is a problem, and this is the easily foreseeable consequences of such an arrangement. Buzz, you alluded to that too, and I don't disagree. Like Buzz, I wonder what conversations were taking place beforehand and whether the chamber knew he was going to vote no or had even flagged this as a priority. And like Buzz said, every chamber supports tort reform.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with Sam's comment in the chat, but that's like the 1,000 foot level, right? Yeah. If you bring it back up to the 10,000 foot level.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
What you're talking about is legislators have to have day jobs.
Yep.
And there's going to be some piece of legislation that comes before that body at some point, and it happens for everybody, where their own personal interests are in that competition. That's why House Rule 133 exists.
Right.
That's why the Mike Chokas, because anything that had to do with alcohol, Mike Chokas would stand up and say,
and that was the right thing
I'd like to invoke Rule 133. Please excuse me.
That was the right thing for him to do, right? I mean, you should not be voting on things that that benefit or harm your interests. Scott, you mentioned that we as legislators, when we were there and legislators who are there now, they owe their constituents their judgment too. And that's a theory that goes all the way back to Edmund Burke, the founder considered by many the founder of conservatism. He says your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment also. So that's a long-standing view of a representative republic. That's what you're hiring people to do, is to go to the Capitol and not just give you their industry, but their judgment also.
Well, we have a new Watch Your Bill segment that Scott recorded with Greg Dolezal and Tony West. This is the red tape rollback. We're going to play that for you. Buzz and I will step away for a minute. Scott will pay some more bills, and then we'll be right back with Quick Hits.
Welcome back for another exciting and interesting and slightly different segment of What's Your Bill? We're here today with a couple of good friends of ours. Obviously, you've heard a lot about AFP, their partner-level Patreon here, Peach Pundit the Podcast. We appreciate the work that they do in Georgia and also supporting us, but really, the work that they do is fantastic. So we're joined today by Tony West and State Senator Greg Dolezal. Tell me, Tony, first, tell us a little bit about yourself and what AFP is and who they are and what they do.
Well, Scott, thanks for having us on. Tony West, State Director for Americans for Prosperity, Georgia. Your listeners probably know, but if you don't, we're an advocacy organization that fights for limited government and economic freedom.
Excellent. And Senator Dolezal, how about you? Tell us a little about yourself.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me. Greg Dolezal, and I've been in the state Senate for the last 7 years, my 7th session. Father of 4 kids, husband, small business entrepreneur, and multiple segments over the last few years, and happy to be here.
And full disclosure, before Senator Dolezal was senator, he wrote a campaign check to me in one of my reelect campaigns, which I've never forgotten and am still grateful for, because I didn't raise a lot of money when I ran for office. So every penny had to be stretched. And thank you for that. So we do this segment, What's Your Bill? Senator Dolezal, what's your bill?
So we have the red tape rollback bill of 2025. It's a priority of Lieutenant Governor that he's asked me to carry. We had this bill last year as well. Got it out of the Senate, didn't get it across the finish line in the House. And we're in the same posture right now. This bill is out of the Senate, got out of House Committee, got reassigned back to House Committee on Friday, and looking to get it across the finish line. But in short, this bill takes a look at the regulatory framework. We talk a lot about the administrative state. We talk a lot about the kind of ever-growing nature of bureaucracy, and you get these rules that layer on top of rules that layer on top of rules. And so we take a surgical approach to ensure that over the long term, Georgia's regulatory framework stays in check. And we do that in a couple of different ways. One, we restore the state legislature we kind of put them in a co-pilot seat rather than being in a back seat to the agencies, so that when we have expensive rules that agencies want to promulgate, the General Assembly has to ratify them. And our thinking there is that, and you get this, Scott, when you were in office, you get calls from back home all the time from people that are dealing with agencies because they don't know anybody at the agency that will take their call, but they call you. And so we want to make sure that the legislature has the last look and is the final stamp of approval on rules that are going to cost Georgians more than $3 million. And that's one thing that the bill does. The other major component of this bill is what we're calling a 4-year spring cleaning. So we're asking agencies to look at every rule that they have once every 4 years and answer a couple simple questions. One, is this rule still meeting its intended purpose? Is this rule the least expensive way to meet its intended purpose? And we're basically you've heard of zero-based budgeting, call it zero-based rulemaking. We're asking them to, every 4 years, look at their rules from top to bottom, and anything that needs to go, we're asking them to get rid of it. Anything that is essential, we're allowing them to keep it. We incentivize for any agency who cuts their rules voluntarily by 10% in that 4-year period. We allow them to forego that process because we know that's an agency that is already proactively looking at their rules from the inside out.
Some of the best legislation that we see, you see a partner come alongside. It's a grassroots effort, organization like AFP or others. There are lots of other organizations that do similar work in their advocacy. But Tony, tell us, how does AFP get people engaged to advocate? This seems like a little bit of a nerdy policy. For us who are policy wonks, we're like, especially on the conservative side, we're like, heck yeah, let's do away with the administrative state. Let's return power to the legislature. Let's fight for separation of powers and take that rulemaking back and making sure that it's elected legislators who are making the law. But how does AFP come alongside and help in an effort like this?
Well, like you just said, we try and connect average Georgians to legislative efforts going on under the dome. And a lot of people are interested in right-sizing the size of government, making sure the legislature's intent is actually being done when laws are passed. And nationwide, AFP is working on passing similar legislation in multiple states. A couple of states have already passed versions of this. already this year, and we anticipate several more to do so as well. We're out in the community all the time. We're a full-time staff of 10 people here in Georgia, so we're talking to average Georgians every day about these types of things. And one common refrain we heard from business owners was that they really like the idea of having the state do an internal audit and make sure they are doing the best for our businesses, specifically the Sunrise Review, that $3 million compliance cost threshold. We had a business owner say to me, several have said this to me, the idea that our state senator and state rep would have greater transparency and have more knowledge if a new regulation were to come down the pike that would impact me, that gives me peace of mind. So when we're looking at how do we keep Georgia's economy the strongest possible, we recently did a flat tax. We're working every year to lower our tax rates across the board. It just makes sense to me to combine that with this type of regulatory reform effort, because if you combine lower taxes and right-sizing regulatory state, we're going to be in really good shape for the long term.
Senator, are there any really egregious rules out there that you came across in researching the need for this legislation that it was like a hot button for you? Like that, this is the example that I want to hold up to the world.
No, there wasn't anything egregious. I think overall, Georgia does a pretty good job. We're a pro-business state, and we have an eye towards that in the executive branch, certainly in the legislature as well. More so, I think that what I have experienced as a member of the General Assembly is consistent feedback that either starting a business, there's some sort of license somewhere, there's a barrier to entry that is just slow and cumbersome. We actually experienced this with my wife, who opened a hair salon at the end of last year, and she's been a licensed cosmetologist for about 20 years. But it was months for her to get through the entire process. She's owned salons before, opened salons before, had a salon location, and was really just doing a rinse and repeat of something she had done before. But it took months. And frankly, it took a phone call from my office to kind of help spur that along, which is not all that uncommon for our office to have to make phone calls on behalf of people back home. And so it's an eye towards that, but it's also this recognition, Scott, and you know this, the currency of the General Assembly largely is what bill did you pass? How many bills did you pass? What bills are you carrying? Nobody's unfortunately really asking us, what did you shrink back? What did you pull back? What's a bill what's a reg that you pulled back? What's an agency that you asked a hard question of? And so I think what that has resulted in, both in the legislature and in the rulemaking process, is this kind of constant layering of regulation on top of regulation that you get to the end of it. It is like walking in your closet. If you never clean your closet after 20 years, you're like, well, that thing was cool 15 years ago, but I'm not wearing it anymore. And so similar to that process of going in and saying, you know what, if this thing hasn't had utility, if I haven't worn this shirt in the last 3 years, it's gone. And I do that, right? I go in my closet every year and I go through this process, and we're asking the agencies to do that, not every year, but once every 4 years, just to ensure the government remains as lean as possible.
So you're asking these regulatory boards, does this regulation spark joy?
That's right. That's right.
And if it does, it goes straight to the trash.
That's right.
Awesome. So as we've gone through this process, one of the things that I learned in the legislature, because I did shrink some things. I got rid of some old boards that weren't meeting anymore. For example, there was one for Lake Altoona Preservation Authority. They hadn't met in 12 years. They still had like $10,000 or $12,000 in cash in their account. But at one point, their executive director had absconded with hundreds of thousands of dollars, actually went to prison for it. And they came to us and they said, hey, we would like for you guys to fund us. And if not, will you fold us? And I said, well, okay, folding's an option. And they're like, no, don't do that. And it was a really small little group of people who they really felt it was an important mission. Have you run into bureaucracies who are willing to fight you for their lives over this?
We really haven't. We've had a few concerns from DOR, for example. They're like, we get these federal regs, and the cost for us to implement these federal regs is significant because it requires TurboTax or whoever to kind of go in and do everything. So we put carve-outs in there for them and with an eye towards complying with federal regs. Like I said, this has been something we've been working on for the last couple of years. And so we've gone through a process with a number of agencies and making sure that this is tailored and custom fit for Georgia. Interestingly enough, though, I have seen some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, many of whom voted for this last time it came around, suddenly are troubled by this idea of asking government to look internal And I don't know if that's because of some things that have happened in the past few months in D.C., or if it's the idea that this may actually pass. And we may actually have to do what I think is a core part of our job. Now, I want to come back to what Tony talked about with this $3 million ratification, right? So you get a proposal for an expensive rule. And what happens right now is that just goes into effect, and the legislature can object, but they don't have to ratify it. And so we are going to be on the hot seat and on the record for our votes on ratifying these rules. And so part of what I wonder is if some legislators like having the agencies out there as the gremlin that they can point to and say, well, they made me do it and I didn't have a say. Well, now your elected official has a say, and they're going to be on the record for what they did on those specific things. And I think it's going to ultimately give us better rules because we're the ones that have to go face the voters and explain it.
Right. It's an accountability measure, right? It's another
100%.
tool for voters to evaluate the performance of their legislators. And this is one of the reasons why we see DC. We talk all the time on the podcast and in real life about how the state runs so much better than DC because you guys, number one, you're not every day. It's not a full-time job. You have a sort of an artificially imposed deadline. Sine die is always out there on the horizon. You got to get all your work done and then you're done for the year. So it forces you to take action. But in DC, they have what we're seeing right now with the CR that just passed. It extended spending on the federal level for 6 months, and it was all the old administration's spending initiatives that were funded. And there's no actual, even though the promise of DOGE is to do some of the things that you're actually doing here, they're without congressional action, those things are temporary. The next administration could come along and undo all that work. But here, if you had a state law like this in place, where we do have a functional legislature that do take care of the issues that matter to Georgians and trying to make the best business environment, you are motivated to take a look. One of the things really quick that nobody told me about the job was that you would be a liaison between the voter and the citizen of Georgia and all these different government bureaucracies. I learned more about government bureaucracies than I ever wanted to as a state legislator because I was trying to advocate for my people who were having problems. They didn't know who to call, or there was an unfair rule, or they had a tax lien that they paid off, but they couldn't get that cleared for whatever reason, and they had all the receipts. Like, these are the things that nobody knows that legislators actually do that type of constituent services. But are you going to scare the pants out of the lazy legislators with this? Are they going to be running for the hills? Are they going to be, after a couple of years, are they going to be like, oh man, Senator Dolezal made me do all this work?
Yeah, I was told by one member of the General Assembly who voted for this last year that this bill was egregious before he proceeded to vote against it this year. So I think that, frankly, some people don't fully understand what we're trying to do. And, Tony's, I think I saw in the paper this morning, Tony, you guys ran some polling on this, and this polls well on both sides of the aisle. Ultimately, Georgians want to have an efficient government. And I don't know, Tony, if you want to highlight that polling. Is it 70%-ish or something like that, or in favor of this?
Yeah, we asked two specific questions about this bill. One is the Sunrise Review for major rules that would have a significant impact on the economy, and 74% of likely voters across the state supported it, including, it was an interesting statistical anomaly. Both Republicans and Democrats were at 74%. The spring cleaning, the every 4-year review that agencies will do, there was a little more partisanship going on, but still 74% across the board. It was actually Republicans were up at 89%. 89% of Republican voters like that part of the bill. And our regulatory code has grown 13% on average every year since 1965. This is a good time to put something like this in place. It's one of those things where you put strong processes and procedures in place so that no matter who is in charge anywhere throughout state government, you're hopefully going to get better results rather than just relying on the goodwill of lawmakers.
Not many people recognize that the state capitol building, the Gold Dome, also serves as a museum for Georgia history. It's got all kinds of displays. I don't know if you guys ever take time, but I'll challenge you to find the needle in the haystack. There is a panel on the 4th floor that is a quote from Jimmy Carter when he was newly elected as governor. He said, "I'm afraid to open a closet in this place because every time I do, a new state agency falls out of it." and it talks about how he took 300 state agencies and condensed them down to 20 something. And he was the original Doge. Like Jimmy Carter was the original Doge. All this duplicative work that was being done across all kinds of different topics, he compressed it and made government more efficient. People don't realize that. And it's not surprising to me that your polling shows there's a lot of cross-partisan support for this, because we're talking about the very basic fundamental thing that where government creates barriers to the marketplace, barriers to the workplace. And you guys are really working hard to clear those barriers so people can live their best life. And I'm really proud to call both your friends in this effort. Tony, tell me a little more about how people can get involved if they want to.
Well, our website's afpgeorgia.com. You can learn more about this specific topic at georgiareigns.com, REINS.
Fantastic. Thank you both for your time. Good luck with your bill. We're pulling for you, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Golden Retriever Rescue of Atlanta, GRRA, is an all-volunteer, tax-deductible charitable organization. They are dedicated to providing veterinary care, comprehensive evaluation, and foster and adoptive homes to golden and Labrador retrievers who are abandoned, mistreated, neglected, or left in shelters throughout Georgia. We encourage you to visit their website grra.com and help connect people and dogs that need each other in their lives. You truly can make this world a better place by helping find homes of gold for these golden-hearted pups.
Conservatives Concerned is a network of political and social conservatives who question the alignment of capital punishment with conservative principles and values. Our programs include educating conservatives about the failed death penalty system and mobilizing them to bring about its end. We come to this issue for a variety of reasons. Some believe that small government and the death penalty don't go together, especially when we compare the high costs of capital punishment to life without possibility of release. Some don't trust the state to get it right. We already know that some innocent people have been sentenced to death, and for others, it may already be too late. Some believe that the death penalty contradicts our values about protecting life. Find out more at conservativesconcerned.org.
So, guys, Brandon Beach has been named the Treasurer of the United States. And State Senator Brandon Beach, now former State
Never heard of
Senator
him.
Brandon Beach.
Don't know who that is. Don't know who that is.
So I do want to note something that I did a quick Google on this position, which is not Senate confirmed. The Treasurer of the United States has been filled by a quick cursory look by a woman since William Alexander Julian left the office in 1949.
Well, is that right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't know. What are you trying to
guys.
say? Just say what you're trying to say, Jason.
I have a lot of things to say at this point in time, but geez, I'm the whole anti-DEI thing just annoys the shit out of me, and this is one of those reasons. This job, like Brandon Beach, will be an answer to a trivia question at some point in time.
I don't think you're giving it way too much
No,
importance.
you're probably right. Because this job, I cannot think of a job in the federal government that doesn't matter more. Like, so
he's over Fort Knox. He'll be over Fort Knox, man.
Yeah.
He'll have his signature on the dollar bill.
He can get to the bottom of there's all these internet rumors that the gold is gone. Senator Beach, you need to find out. We need to know. Yeah.
Look, don't be a beach. Brandy Beach is the comment. And
that's a
all
throwback
comments
to
all
the
comments
COVID
are
era.
made by the commenters and do not necessarily reflect the views of the three of us.
Yeah. And I'll emphasize what Buzz said there. Not necessarily. Yeah, Brandon doesn't like it when I say his name, so I just, whatever. I will say this, though. It will set up a very interesting special election to replace him. Our sources tell us that his start date is April 15th, that would put his resignation after sine die, which is April 4th. There is some speculation right now as when is this going to happen? There's been no announcement from the White House. We expected that to happen late last week. It hasn't happened yet, but our sources tell us, who are not Brandon Beach, but maybe people who are close to him, have told us that he did get an offer letter. He has signed his offer letter. He's accepted that offer, and the start date is April 15th. So
now look,
we'll see.
Let me just say, congratulations to Brandon Beach. This, honestly, as a guy who has and used to collect coins, this I would like that. This would be fun because you're in charge of the mint. It's one of the things that you do. I'd love to see the piles of gold at Fort Knox. That'd be pretty cool. And your name is on the bill. You got to sign your name on the bills. So, and someone showed me a picture today. Apparently, at the GOP convention over the weekend in Fulton County, he's signed at least one bill already. So, the other guy's,
a dollar bill.
The other person's name was crossed out, and there's his name now.
I don't suppose it could be any less valuable.
No.
God. All right. Okay. All right.
But no, it is going to be an
This
interesting race. I think Senator Beach told me today he's heard 7 or 8 names, so it's going to be a crowded field, I suspect.
You guys are a bunch of beaches. So Rep. Shaw Blackman moves to revoke new Georgia Project's nonprofit status. I imagine this one's going to create a lot of turmoil amongst Democrats in the state for sure. And
yeah.
Not much to cover. It's a quick kick, but the reality is they did have a $300,000 fine levied, which is a historical number. It's the biggest fine I think the Georgia Ethics Commission's ever levied against an organization for illegal campaigning. This is a group that has said that they are a nonprofit C3, not C4. So we'll
Congress
continue to watch it.
Congress is starting to sniff around, right?
Yeah. The ethics chairman, David Amati, has asked Congress for them to investigate additional potential charges.
Oh, wow. That would probably be within Ways and Means jurisdiction. They're going to be kind of busy.
Well, that's interesting because Shaw Blackman is the chairman of the House Ways and Means here in Georgia.
I'm talking about Congressional.
Federally,
House.
Yep.
So Louis DeJoy has resigned as Postmaster General.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, well, they're talking about privatizing. Well, I mean, this is when I say they're talking about it, they're having, like, I think Trump has said, like, yeah, maybe privatization is the way to go. Good luck getting that bill through Congress. I think we've even said before, it's like mostly rural, like when you talk about postal service reform, the reason it doesn't happen is because of the rural members, or members who represent rural districts.
Sure.
Yep. Yeah.
But mail delivery in Georgia had dropped below 40% on time delivery as of March last year. This is a major implication for my work in the election arena and helping people, making sure they have the ability to return their absentee ballot. Exactly, Buzz. And I was actually interviewed today. I think it was 11 Alive that came and interviewed me to get a reaction as somebody who supports voters' rights and making sure everybody has access to the ballot box. They wanted my reaction, so I gave it to them. I'm joyful. DeJoy going makes me joyful.
You're overjoyed at DeJoy leaving, huh?
Yes, I am, because maybe for once I can start relying on things arriving when I expect them to arrive.
Don't count on it. So Georgia's removing a little more than 450,000 inactive registered voters this summer, which is, according to the AJC, going to be one of the largest removals of voters. I can't talk today. Largest removals of voters in the history of the country. This information is coming from Eric. Buzz?
Well, maybe my memory is fuzzy. I remember one not long ago after the last presidential election of over 500,000. Maybe my memory's wrong, but hopefully their fact checkers check that fact. But look,
these voter rolls, not the largest, the largest.
I mean, these things swell as you get close to elections, because especially presidential elections, the voter rolls swell, and this is what you're supposed to do. This is the process. After the election, you start cleaning it up again. Yeah, and it's the next step in the ongoing process of keeping voter rolls clean. So go ahead,
I
Scott.
just want to highlight a couple of things really quick. The timing of this was interesting for a couple of different reasons. It just so happened that this was the earliest they could do this.
Yeah,
the federal law prevents the state from cleaning their elections too close before an election. And they have to wait a certain time after the election. So this is the earliest after the election they could do it. It just happens to be during a legislative session where there have been multiple pieces of legislation that want to remove us from ERIC, which is a multi-state organization that we pay annual dues to so that we can coordinate with them when our people move away. So they are no longer eligible to vote in Georgia. We can scrub them from our list. 177,000 of these voters, the 455, came from Eric. And at a time when legislation is being considered to remove us from Eric for no really good reason, frankly. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about Eric, but without it, we're talking costing us 5-10 times more than what we're paying right now to affect the same exact type of thing. And we've just shown how valuable it is. Without Eric, those 177,000 people are not removed from our rules.
So we got a What's Your Bill throwback. State Representative Scott Hilton's piece of legislation to ban cell phones in classrooms has received final passage. This is House Bill, 320? Is that right, Scott? 340. 340.
I don't know by numbers.
Yeah, House Bill 340. Yep.
I still need one of you to convince me in this day and age why this is a good idea. Because like if Reagan's at school, because we've done this in Virginia, Youngkin did this in Virginia, and I'm not adamantly opposed to it as much as look, if something happens, I want her to have a cell phone. So she doesn't have a cell phone yet.
You can under this bill, a local district has flexibility to develop a plan of action in an emergency that lets kids have the phone. But Jason, the evidence is overwhelming. In fact, I read over a study from Virginia. Unbelievable improvement in grades when the cell phone is removed. Anecdotally, Representative Hilton talked about, the teachers like saying, let's do a test. Let's put our phones over here and let's count the number of interruptions. Hundreds and hundreds in a 45-minute class.
And there's a recovery time. Every time they pick up their phone, they look at it, they've got it. It takes them a certain amount of time to get back to actually studying.
So it's absolutely harming kids' learning all up and down.
And the details of the bill matter because it's not a top-down. It requires local school districts to create rules that fit their local needs. And so you have to look at it that way. It's not a top-down solution.
And then finally, I don't know jack about this, but there is peace in our time. Our good friend Jason Shepard has buried the hatchet with, I don't know if I'll pronounce
Sally.
Okay, Sally Grubbs.
I would want to say Salee too, because Salee, right? That's how you spell it.
It's a very southern way to spell Sally. You got to admire that. But Jason Shepard has gone hard after the Cobb Republican Party and its leadership under the outgoing chairman, Sally Grubbs. They have fought like cats and dogs. And Shepard has, to a large degree, used Peach Pundit as a platform to launch his criticisms for all kinds of different things, from the Cobb County Republican Party losing their permanent headquarters to policy decisions to censuring Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger, which is not really the role of the party. And it's peace in our time. They buried the hatchet for it to come together in common cause to defeat that lovable group of goofballs, rejects, and a-holes known as the GRA. And I just find a certain level of like chef's kiss beauty in that arrangement. And congratulations to Sally and to Shepard for finally burying the hatchet.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I hope they're friends forever.
There was a picture, right? I think a picture of the two of them with the lady who won. So, yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that's the other thing, too. Cobb County was so fed up with the GRA, they elected a 42-year-old lady who had never been involved in politics ever to be chairman of their party. That's how fed up of the GRA they were.
She'll probably do a great job.
And just one other quick point, too, since it's quick hicks. The fallout here has been fascinating to watch within the GRA aspect and this other, I guess, anti-establishment part of the party. Sally Grubbs came to power riding the anti-stolen election stuff. Yep. But she's being attacked now as an establishment rhino, which proves to me that you either die the hero or live long enough to become the establishment.
I mean, it amazes me. It amazes me that after all the GRA has said and done, the it's not just prejudiced, racist stuff they've said.
Yes.
The antics they've pulled, frivolous lawsuits, so on and so forth, that people still buy into the nonsense they're pushing. It's
it kind of sounds like in Fulton, They did very well in the Fulton elections. I don't know. I'm sure they have achieved success in other places, but beating them back in Cobb's a big deal. For the longest time, Cobb has been one of the best, before the GRA arrived on the scene, one of the best, well-run, most respected county Republican parties in the state of Georgia. And I wish this new lady well, and I hope she can help restore some of that lost luster.
Wow. Good luck, because Cobb's been changing
May
quite
the
a bit.
odds ever be in your favor.
Cherokee's about to build a wall. Make Cobb pay for it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to Peach Pundit the Podcast. Get your merch. We have a great selection of T-shirts. We have hats, of which I'm sporting right here. It's a nice trucker hat in various different colors. You can find that at Peach Pundit, the shop, or Peach Pundit, the merch, at our website, peachpundit.com. All the music you hear on Peach Pundit is original by Jason Pye. This is published, produced, and edited by me, Scot Turner. Peach Pundit the Podcast is Jason Pye, Buzz Brockway, me, Scot Turner. But these people are the most important ones. They're the people who rock, that reach into their pocket every single month, throw us a few bucks to allow us to keep this thing going. They do that by heading on over to patreon.com/peachpundit and signing up for one of our tiers. They are Brett Harrell, Tony West, and our friends at Americans for Prosperity, Bill Werkheiser, Bo Brannon, Colin Martin, Jeff Cobble, Hank Burnham, James Hall, John Vestal, Jordan Reed, Mike Buchert, Reed Powell, Robert Lee, and our friends at Lee6 Media, Ron Daniels, Ryan Graham, Ryan Purvis, Sam Thomas, the OG, who's been chatting it up with us all day in this episode, Shannon Ferguson, Stuart Wilkinson, and our anonymous contributor who wants you to know more about the Alzheimer's Association. Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, go tell a friend about us, leave a review if you're really feeling helpful. We'll catch you next time.
Good.
Go Jackets.